I think it's sort of hard when you're trying to make it that people want you, they want to say, okay, but what are you good at? And you have to be so specific. Like,
Mm.
uh, if somebody does a 1940s period drama with like a savvy heroine, they'll want you to that to be your career. And I think you just get caught up within like kind of the mechanics of everything where it feels like, well, this is what they want me to do. If I this is how I'm going to make money, this is how I'm going to stay in this kind of career. You do end up feeling like you have to sacrifice a lot of the creativity because of what everybody wants from you. And I think maybe that's really hard for upcoming filmmakers. I don't know if it's completely different for you. I don't know. I think I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. I'm like, what do people want from me and how can I give it to them?
Yeah, like I think it's part of the creator's struggle, isn't it? Like if you're a creative person, you want to bring your creativity to this world, however you can do it. Now, the fact is the world is going to have a perspective on your work, and now you've got to find your way to telling your story in your work without be it the right support or the money or the team. So you've now got to navigate the tempestuous sands of time and decide, okay, right, well, if you're going to bring a story into this world and you're going to live with it for like a year, 2 years, let's say you spend a year writing it. So no, actually, let's talk through it. So you're going to spend 6 months doing all the research. You're going to do a 6 month write on it. Then you're going to maybe mull on it for about half a year. Then you might try and start making it. So that's like 2 years already going into like that point. And then you've got to go through the whole process of shooting it, go through the whole process of editing it, and then it might be 3.5 years, 4 years before your idea is like out. I think like we got to take a bit of reflection on that and go, okay, well, if you're going to live on something or with something for that length of time, 2 years is long enough. The time investment is not really the factor, but what is the factor is if you're doing it and it's basically to please everybody else but you. I think that is really the 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 the, the precipice that people fall into creatively, because the outlet of creative juice and creative like thinking is being free and being forward and pragmatic in terms of how you want to bring your story into the world. Not my story because I told you my opinion on your story. So you bring your my opinion to your story and make my story in your story. I think one of the things is like you're going to tell this story and you're going to live with it for night and day. There's something you got to weigh up, right? Now, you need to know what sandbox you're playing in. And the sandbox is like if you're telling a Hollywood style kick ass female heroine who's going to go out there and save the day, fabulous. But that's the film you really want to make, right? So you're going to go right out and go for that. Fine, you're on your passion. Now, some people may need to fund it, some people might not see what you see, but you're passionate about figuring it out to making it happen. I think sometimes also the worst thing is having that idea and someone goes, "Do you know what? Really, I think your audience, you should focus on telling a story about a boy in a council estate." Totally two different types of film, totally two different types of vibe. You go, "Yes, okay, cool." And you spend the next 2.5, 3 years doing the story that you have zero passion for. If you do that enough in your life, you'll start to realize that the compromises that you'll make will be self-sabotaging activities on your actual passion as a creative person. I'm so preservational on the fact of whether people agree with a viewpoint I've got in my story or not. I don't care because you should never be victim of anybody else's judgment on your work. But for you to get it from start point A to point B, you've got to trust in your process in bringing it to life. Now, again, in this world of filmmaking and that, there's certain things you need investment and you need all this other stuff to bring it to life. But if you're passionate enough about making something work and you don't mind the sacrifice that goes into telling that story, and that means like, let's use The Last Rite as an example. There was no investment in that movie. There was no cinematographers in that movie. There was no DPs in that movie. There was no editors on that movie. There was no writer on that movie. There was no nothing on that movie. It was literally just I had to learn what I needed to learn to get it across the line, and my producer, Chloe, absolute angel, all the sacrifices that she put into it. So I had to trust in the fact that anything that I needed to get done, if I didn't know the skill, I'd have to learn it. So I was like, well, we can't just wait for somebody to give us the money to go and make this film. Especially if, you go to give someone your idea and then someone's like, well, I don't think this would happen. I feel that would happen. And da, 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 da. And before you know it, you've got so many opinions on your story. You struggle to find your north and south. And I think, it's a really interesting space that we work in creatively, because we are so busy valuing everybody else's opinions and we never value our own. And you're the only person who has to live with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, it's very counterintuitive, especially especially if you're very strong-minded as an individual and you have an idea about what you want to say. The biggest thing is just making sure that you keep aspects of what you want to make and bring into this world in check. So just don't be under the illusion of delusion. Just make sure that, you know, is if you've got a story, let's say, and by hook or by crook, you're gonna make it happen. All you have to do is start basic. Do I have the actors I need? No. Do I know the actors I need? Yeah. Okay. So there's your actors covered. Do I have a camera? Yeah. Okay, cool. So there's your camera covered. What do you know from a resourceful side of the fence? And then just telling that story. Maybe you don't have the money, but maybe that makes it a better movie because you didn't have what you needed.
How long did it take for Ascendants to come into fruition?
So Ascendants, when did I start that? I started writing that like early January 2022. I started writing that project. I wanted to work with Alex for a long time. Alex plays Dante, one of the characters that's in the story. Now, I wanted to work with him for a very long time, and we just not found the right project to work on. So I was like, right, dude, I really want to work with you. I'm just going to basically put this little short together. We're gonna figure something out. Okay, cool. So I started writing it in January. By August, September, we was shooting it, and then the rest of from I'd say end of September through to about January of 2023 was pretty much editing and stuff like that. So predominantly all the post production work I did pretty much everything there. Wasn't no budget, there wasn't no massive team. It was just like, let's just go down, tell this story, and do it the best way possible. So that's what we did, and I'm very thankful uh, for these little projects and for meeting such a wonderful group of collaborators on the project of Ascendants. Like everybody was like an absolute blessing to work with, and yeah, I'd hope to work with them all again pretty soon in the future, be it on Ascendants or another project.
How did you do the casting for the short film?
So the casting for Ascendants pretty much came from speaking with Alex and his partner G, who's also playing one of the characters in the story. She plays Rain. So I basically said to them, like, like, who do you know that one might be able to, kick some butt on screen, but also carry a bit of acting and presence with them? And they made a few suggestions, and we had a little look at some of them. Max Cavanham, one of the other actors, I knew him from a previous project that we worked on. So what I ended up doing was speaking to him, cast him in one of the roles, and it was just a combination between us all like coming together and talking about who they could bring to the table that we would vibe with, that would work. And then the rest was history. Everyone that we ended up working with on the project was yeah, just really brought some A game, and not only brought an A game, but brought a very good personality and vibe to the set. And I'm just really thankful for that.
How did you design the action sequences for the film?
So the action sequences for Ascendants was pretty much down to like what I said with to myself with this story is like these characters are they can fight. They could really do a lot of damage. But the idea is that the result of them fighting is really as a result of no options left. When they get into the throwdown of stuff, they can really handle it. But I almost wanted to make the characters get to the point of where they're trying their best to not fight. So what I did is I sort of set up a few rules to how I saw the story and to how I wanted the engagement of the fighting. The fighting wasn't about having a 50, 100 plus move sequence of things. These characters are trying to get to point A from point A to point M. You know, how are they going to do it? But also, how are they going to do it without having as much interaction as possible? And when the interaction happens, how do they respond or B react? This is really important to the levels of building up the drama in the fighting. So this is what I ended up doing. So the first few instances, it was about short dispatches. It wasn't about fast, loads of moves, 20 moves there. It was like really short. And then when it got into more of a sequence, it was like to try and make it feel more scrappy and a little bit more on the edge, like holy God, right. All of a sudden there's a brick wall. How do I navigate the brick wall? Do I go through it, over it, round it, build another wall to go above it? Like it was that sort of analogy with the fighting. While that's all going on, within the fighting structure, I also wanted one of the characters. She's going through a process of metamorphosis as she's going through the story. So, because of this metamorphosis that she's going through, I also wanted that to reflect somewhat within the fighting. You know, so like there's parts where she has a pain in her head and it's like she's dealing with aspects of that while fighting, while trying to save herself. But yet there's also the other character who's like the protector, who probably is more competent and is very much up for a fight, but he's not always around to save the day. So I try to build story very much into the action because I
Mm.
think that's really important. Not having action for action's sake, but having an action as a result of no options left.
Did location affect the action? Like, did it make any difficulties?
No, do you know what? The location wasn't too tricky. The the thing that was more tricky about the location was it was just trying to create a feeling that made it feel different from how it started.
Mm.
So what I was very conscious of was like we start the film itself starts in a wider open space where there's a lot more room and there could be more than anybody hiding in the midst somewhere, like waiting to pop out. As they go through the story and it starts, intensifying, what I wanted to do is I wanted to pull the story down into a more of a narrow point. So it's not about they can run everywhere and anywhere. It's like they've been funneled down this like what we called the fight corridor. And this corridor, obviously it's woodland, so it's not a natural corridor, but this fight corridor that we created meant that it kept this line. So I'm one I really love like lines and symmetry and stuff. So it kept the fight down this line, but also it meant that the more people we get into the mix of this line, it meant it was a bit more chaotic. So what I did was like I was like, right, how can I maximize the potential of the location while keeping the fighting engaging? So it didn't create anything that was difficult. It just meant that I needed to think a lot more about the intensity of the fight design that happened down certain bits. So that was pretty much the only thing really. And the sun.